Computer, yes. All right. Hey, what's happening? What's happening, Calvin? Good to see you again, brother.
Man, what's going on, man? It's time to get it done. Time to do it again. Once
Time
again,
to,
it's home.
it's on from the In the Den show to now actual political campaigns. And look what's changed since the last time we was on a show together.
And I need glasses. I really do. It's time. I can't see anything.
Oh my goodness. It's so glad to have you. I know we were supposed to have A.L. Smith on the show. She had to get called away, professional obligations and so forth. So I'm gonna be real excited when we get to do this again for AL. So I can't wait. But I want to start out talking to our viewers and those that are supporting us today. I want to say good morning from District 32, the Congressional District of Texas. My name is Charles Harper, and I want to say that I am honored to step into this conversation. And it's not as if I'm claiming that I have all the answers to what's going on in our politics. That's not why I felt a sense of duty to do this. But it is coming from a place of deep passion to have this conversation, because the district that I live in and that I am running for as an independent, my life experiencing the experiences, the things that I've gone through, and the challenges that I still face are very common among this community. And so, I've from hardship to uniform to construction to mental health to business, this whole education sector, I feel like representation really matters at this point. And that's not to suggest that Julie Johnson, who is currently the representative for this district, is not representing the things that she feels passionate about, and those community members who are passionate about the things that she's supporting. But I think there needs to be a broader and more diverse application of representation, and just knowing what our political cycle is. And that's why I have the donkey and the elephant behind me, understanding that this political cycle has gone on so long and pulled people from each other so far, that I really think that it's going to take an independent candidate that really is not trying to get into politics for the power of the office, but really to speak for all of the people, and not just those people that align with political party lines. Because as you and I both have experienced, there are things in both the Democrat Party and the Republican Party that appeal to most constituents. I think that most people do believe in fiscal conservatism. We don't want a government just wasting our money. We do believe in traditional values, but that's more than Christianity, right? That's whether you're Jewish or you're Muslim or you're Hindu or Buddhist, or, any one of the over 45,000 versions of Christianity, or the 300 plus more faiths that is practiced in the United States. You should be able to, from a conservative view, you should be able to practice your religion as long as it doesn't bring harm to anybody else. And on the Democrat side, civil rights is an important issue. People locked out of opportunity not just hurts them as individuals, but it hurts our economy. It hurts our immigration. It hurts the ability to provide laws that include the needs, not necessarily wants, but the needs of more people, when we're taking this singular view to politics and saying that you can only be this or you can be that. So with that, Calvin, man, it's great to see you again. I know you were running in, you ran for office for the Dallas Council in the 7th district, didn't you?
Yes, Dallas County District 7 I ran for, and I'm not running for that again. My friend and Sarin Foundation founder, along with we both founded the Sarin Foundation, but Brian Hessen is running for Dallas City Council District 7 this time, and I am supporting him and everything. He's a great guy. He really cares about the communities. One of the things that you and I talk about, people that are actually willing to get out and do the work. We've done with Serum Foundation about 40 cleanups in the last 4 years, cleaning the community up.
Yeah.
We have to get up to code program, helping seniors get their houses back up to code and make sure that the community is being upheld to a certain standard. But more importantly, what you and I are talking about here today, which is, hey, let's bring some common sense back to politics. The hard left and the hard right, it's killing us. There's some situations where we may be Democratic most of the time, but there's 20% of that time where, hey, maybe the other side has a point. Let's listen to them. And if that's going to suit the community best, let's go over there, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
And vice versa. And so that's why you're running, and that's something that we're definitely going to get into. We got to return common sense, decency, and openness to politics to benefit the people.
Yeah, we definitely do. We definitely do. And I think one of the things that because you're an attorney, criminal defense attorney here in Dallas, and been practicing as an attorney for how many years now? I can't even remember.
I came out in 2001, was licensed in November of 2001. And then 2026 will be my 25th year.
Yeah.
And it's been it's been like a blur. I mean, I've been able to do quite a number of things these last 25 years, and I'm blessed.
Incredible, incredible. So the first thing that I want to kind of jump into, because it's causing a big uproar, and because you're an attorney, the first thing I wanted to dive into is this understanding between executive orders and legislative power. Now, I teach U.S. history, but you're a practicing attorney. And we know that our government is broken up into three different branches, all having equal power. And what we've been seeing since even prior to the Obama administration is a use of executive orders to have to move agendas forward, and in some respects, it bypasses Congress. So, can you give us a good understanding of the difference and the impact or gravity of executive orders, the difference between executive orders and legislative power?
So basically, Congress passes the laws for those agencies, and those laws are what they use to implement and provide the public services. What's happening is the president of the United States, this current president, is using these executive orders to apply laws in a way that benefits almost his own end. So what happens is the law is in place for A, B, and C to happen.
Okay.
But what he's doing with the executive orders, he may say, you know what, we're going to emphasize A over B and B over C. Even though everything's in place, he's using all of the ability, because he is in the operational part of the federal government.
Right, the executive branch.
He's using these operational parts to say, okay, A and B and C are there. We really don't jive with C. So we're going to have the agency, we're going to tell the agency by executive order to focus on A and B.
Right.
And so that's what's happening. Now, the argument that's happening is he's trying to eliminate entire agencies now. And that's where Congress is pushing back and saying, no, we created the Department of Education, but you can't, and the laws and the way that that's going to operate about the funding, but you cannot go in and just destroy the entire agency. Now, you may be in charge on how, for the most part, how that agency runs, but you can't go and take the entire agency. And that's been the argument.
Yeah, well, let's dive into that a little bit, because the executive branch, the president issued an executive order, I believe it was on Thursday, that required museums, federal museums and federal property to remove divisive content from these institutions that place in what the president has expressed is an undue maybe sense of guilt, maybe a sense of blame, maybe a sense of improper um, 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 position, or I don't
Yes.
know how you want to explain it, but
Yes.
essentially saying that these museums and so forth are presenting divisive information to the public about the history of the United States in different aspects, and that includes the racial issues of the past that has, established what we're experiencing today. And so I can definitely understand the concerns of a lot of people with that kind of executive order as to who determines what is divisive and what is anti-American, as I believe the act is a return to remove the insanity is part of this act in the title, remove the insanity. And so who determines what is insanity, what is anti-American? And I know that the Vice President, J.D. Vance, is on the board of that. And so with the president having the powers to issue executive orders in that capacity, does he negate Congress or the people from having any voice in that?
This is the issue that we're currently having. Even though he has the power, in a sense, to negate that, and then Congress has the ability to push back, we have a Congress right now that is so beholden to him that they won't push back. The Democratic Party right now needs to be a lot stronger about pushing back, but they don't have the numbers that they once had. And then the elephant in the room, Charles, is what happens when I'm an agency head and the president is saying A, but I know B is the right thing, and then I do B. Who is there to assist me in making sure that I don't get charged with a crime, that I keep my job, and that there's a guardrail? The guardrail in the past they've been the judges, and they've been Congress and the judges to a point. But now Congress is not willing to speak up as much. And as you look, even some of the judges are starting to rule in ways that do not get the ire of the president up to where they have problems. And that's where the problem lies. I'm running an agency and I do the right thing. Who is there to protect me when one branch comes for me for doing the right thing?
Yeah. So here's my thoughts on it, and specifically my personal thoughts, and then as running as an independent for Congressional District 32, is that I can accept that the president, the Republican Party, won the elections. I can accept that they have the majority in the Senate and the House, and I can accept that the Supreme Court is conservatively heavy. And so accepting that, because I do believe in democracy and the practice of it, in my mind, I have to say they won. So this is the agenda. And I'm not liking some of this agenda. And so what do we do in that space where we say, well, I don't like what the president is doing. I don't like the agenda. I don't like this. I don't like that. As an independent, I say to myself, but they won. They did win. You hear the media outlets speaking to how many people voted for this agenda. And so as an independent, I have to say to myself, even though I'm passionate about LGBTQ plus rights, and I'm passionate about other things in the civil rights space, I do have to look at the framework of what the current administration is putting out. And for the time being, instead of constantly fighting and costing the taxpayer more money to stop these things in court, which there is absolutely enough people doing that, I have to say to myself, okay, there are people fighting his agenda, and there are people not getting anything because his agenda is being fought so abrasively, even if you will. So where does that leave the constituents while they wait? It takes taxpayer money to hire law firms to go and fight the policies that the president is putting out. My approach would be just like I used to do with, I don't know if you remember, I'm a Freemason. And when I became a Freemason, what I found out was that there were what we called regular or legal Freemasons, and then there were these irregular groups who weren't recognized as practicing legitimate Freemasonry. And so I got into that arena very quickly, found the exclusion part by race very quickly, and then I went on this campaign to try to get all of these irregular people to join regular accepted Masonic organizations. And what I found was that I had to be empathetic towards them. I had to understand, why do you feel this need to exist in this space, and refute what I'm telling you is what you need to do. Because belief systems, you can't change someone's belief system, right? They have to accept it. And so when I bring that into and I brought that into my career, right? Doing inclusion work and interpersonal inclusion and communication, and for these organizations and business that I've done. And what I came to understand, especially during 2015, 2016 election cycle, was that the more that I pushed back on how others felt, the more I pushed them away, because what I was doing was telling them that their position wasn't valid, right? I was telling them that their feelings about something were wrong. And so I don't think we can do that anymore. I think what we have to do now is say, well, I realize that this party lost, this party won, this is their agenda. So while they are in charge, what can I work with them on in their agenda that gets at least some things done for the constituents that didn't vote for this party, because they still have to be served. I think it's almost cruel to say that one party won, and so a constituent has to pick between this and that, align with two different parties, and not get any of the rest of their needs met simply because they voted for one party or the other. So I take the position of, what within this framework can work for us? Because if I sit here getting upset at what I don't like, I won't see any of the things that are possibilities. For example, real quick, the Health and Human Secretary, we were talking about this before we came on, was in West Virginia talking about red dye in food. Now, we've known for many years that red dye in food is unhealthy. In fact, most of the ingredients, preservatives we put in food are dangerous to our body, but we do it because we're in an agricultural situation where it's needed. But something like that, I do support. And then I just disagree on the way that the idea of the COVID and how that was handled. But I can agree that red dye does need to be taken out of food.
Well, it's those types of understandings and situations that you have that we got to get out here to the general public. So let's we go back to what you were saying. Point blank, yes, the other side won. Do I spend 4 years consistently fighting 100% of everything that they do, knowing I have constituents that are living, that are working, that are trying to pay bills, they're trying to raise their children, they're trying to educate their children. So do I sit here and not allow myself and those people that are my constituents to receive at least 40 or 50%
something? Can I get something? Because if I sit here and just fight, one, psychology says they'll never see or hear me. All I'm doing is pushing them away further.
Exactly.
And the last time I checked, e pluribus unum, out of many won. So while it's good to have representation between those principles that people espouse, that may be a majority on this side and a majority on this side, I would contend, just like the American Revolution, you had 25% of the people supporting the American Revolution. You had about 25% that still supported the crown, and you had about 50% that didn't care at all because they felt powerless. And if you look at the last election cycle, you saw almost the same thing. You saw a little bit more of the majority go towards the Republican Party. You saw less goes towards the Democratic Party, and you still had more than 40% of 18-year-olds and older who are eligible to vote not even participating.
And you know why? Because let's touch on this. This is the reason why you're running as
Come on,
independent.
come on.
Is because they feel powerless, and they feel like nothing is going to change because we're so far left and so far right that when I need a decision made on something that's important to me, and let's say I'm only going to get 30% of what I was going to get if this party's in, but I need that 30% is better than 0%.
It's better than zero right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. This party lost. So I go without for 4 years.
That's a whole nother conversation, because see what's happening too as well. If your party loses, you need to go back and readjust. Don't come back telling me what you told me in the last election, but saying it louder and saying it more defiantly. That's not going to cut me.
And then you spend millions and millions of donations, billions. Right? Billions, campaigning to get gaslighting, saying all the emotional rhetoric you can to say, hey, we have to fight and stop this. And I'm like, you got elected to do that.
Bingo.
We can't stop this simply by voting another campaigning and raising all these billions of dollars that could go towards the community. But we're spending billions of dollars to get in front of people to tell them to fight the other party. Where has that gotten? Let me look at these numbers. Out of COVID, this district, the median household income fell from 80,600 to 66,900. That's a 17% decrease since 2022. And yes, COVID played a significant role. There's no mistake about that. And we can assign blame to how the administration at the time handled COVID. It doesn't matter to me who did what wrong at that point to cause this.
Exactly.
What are we all doing now to lift this? How are we ensuring that these small, because I live in this community, and how are we ensuring that all of these small businesses around this community, who's going to them and telling them, hey, there are federal subsidies and grants and all kind of federal funds that you can access to help your small business to move further along so that you can lift your business back up. But instead, all we hear is the campaigning about how much fraud, and people took advantage of those COVID loans, right? They did. So instead of hearing what these small businesses could do, we're hearing about what people did. I know what people did. I don't need you to campaign my emotions predicated on what people did. What are we doing right now going forward?
And this is a conversation we got to have. What can my candidate for Senate, for Congress, what can they do to make my life better? Not point to what the other side is doing. What's important to me? Education is important to me. Economics is important to me. Healthcare is important to me. And I need my candidate to be willing to stand up to the left or to the right if it's going to benefit me. I need someone with enough courage to do that.
and not be angry, not be biased to say, I don't agree with everything you're going to do, and I don't agree with all of your policies. But I know that there are areas that we can agree on. And as an independent, if you're worried about the appearance of working along with a Democrat, I'm not a Democrat. If you're a Democrat worried about the perception of you working along with a conservative, I'm not a conservative. I possess both, and that's literally how I grew up. My biracial parents, and white mother and black father. I've never fit in anywhere, right? I worked construction for 13 years, and then I went through 13 years of college. I don't fit in anywhere because in the corporate space, I'm told, oh, you behave like that because you were in construction. In the construction, when I speak to blue collar workers, the perception of me is because I've been out of construction so long that I'm too academic to understand their perspective. So I've always walked in the middle of it. And so as an independent, I'm simply doing the same exact thing. And when we think about instances such as these executive orders, you know, in my mind, I say, well, this is an economic president.
Exactly.
I'm not saying he's racist because I don't know this guy's heart. Has he
Mhm.
done things that have racist effects? Absolutely. Are there executive orders now that are going to have negative systemic effects to marginalized communities? Absolutely. But instead of getting angry about that, I look at it and say, okay, I can't stop that agenda. I can raise money. I can send those emails out and say, hey, donate to my campaign. We're going to stop this. I could do that. Or what I could do is say, um, let me look at what is available in here. Because if you're trying to gut out and eliminate the Department of Education, and which that's another conversation we can have. Okay, well, what opportunities are there for a Black-owned private business to take individuals that were working for the Department of Education and stand up a private company, because that's what he's trying to do, it seems, is privatize everything. How can I stand up a company that's Black owned, that's women owned, that's LGBTQ owned, you know, any of these marginalized communities, stand up a company and take on those responsibilities? And if that's the pursuit, how can that company benefit in that economic space and still lift up and provide what these educational spaces need so that they can move forward?
And you know,
That's just an example of how I see it.
that's what you need to be able to do. And when I say need to be able to do, you got some people that are thinking, you know what, if I take that position, yeah, it's going to help my constituents, but it's going, my party head's going to be really upset with me because I got to work with Jane and Jack in the Republican Party. And, or, you know what, I can really take this position, but if I do that, my people in the Democratic Party are going to be upset with me. You got to be very, very careful about that.
Yeah.
And number one, you got to have enough courage.
Yeah.
And this is where we got to really get down to the nitty gritty. People are hurting, man. People are hurting daily.
Bad.
Kids are not getting services that they need. Healthcare is not getting.
Not at all.
People not getting the healthcare services. What you said in your district, 17% of the income has went down. At the same time, while things are going up in price, so
right.
It's
and just to be clear, I taught in this district. See? I literally started my U.S. history teaching career in this district. Bingo. And so working with a population right here, and I won't put out the school, but working right here in the population, you know, my population in the classroom, it was a Title I school, right? It was majority Hispanic. It was majority Hispanic, probably about 30% African American, definitely 501, 504s. English as a second language learner. So, you know, I literally have worked directly with the students and parents in this community to know what they're going through, both during right before COVID hit, and then I returned to teaching after working for the Overland Park, city of Overland Park, Kansas. I came back here to teach U.S. history, economics, and everything again, and I'm still seeing the same effect, the same problems, the same inadequate support that I was seeing when you and I met way back in 2015, right before I started teaching.
And see, what you just said is this. I've been a Dallas resident in my entire life. The only time I haven't lived here is when I was working or I was in school. And that's been, you know, a few years here or there. I went to Harper for some years, went to law school at St. Mary's. I lived in Texarkana because I worked at a huge law firm before I went to law school. So I lived there for a year. Yeah. And so the issue is, what have I seen change with the current parties doing the same thing year after year after year after year? I think things have gotten worse. And I'm tired. And you're tired of it. And that's why you're running. Yeah,
you know, and so speaking about that, I want to jump from the executive orders, and I appreciate your support so much. I want to jump from the executive orders to immigration. And I want to jump to that because what we're talking about goes right into that and some of the issues that the individuals in this district are facing. Recently, I was made aware of a situation where a young lady, Hispanic, she came over to the United States. She was brought here undocumented, and the parents are splitting up. One of the parents is documented, is a citizen. The other one is not. And the young lady being here under 18, because the parents can't provide for her anymore, rather than she be supported so she could finish her academic career here, she is facing the issue of being sent back to Mexico by her parents and not being able to come back to the United States for who knows how long. So, and I say that saying that's a child. I know adults that are people that are very close to me. I know a Hispanic male right now who paid for their bachelor's, was part of the Dreamers Act, and who paid for their undergraduate degree, paid for their master's degree here, paid for it because they did not qualify for federal aid loans to go to school. And so they did that on their own, just like so many constituents who are opposed to tuition being, college debt being eradicated. This individual paid for it currently, not back in the 1970s when a college degree was $5,000. He paid for his bachelor's degree and a master's degree. And guess what? He cannot teach in a public school here in Texas.
Wow.
He cannot qualify for insurance. He pays everything on his own. And so to get by, this person literally has to stay within his community, his own community, because they understand, they're empathetic, and he tutors students who are doing poorly in subjects in school. Now, why should an individual like that, who has not been able to become a citizen, and he has tried, and when I say tried, repeatedly, and each time paying $600 here, paying $1,000 here, and all doing this, just tutoring, trying to raise enough money to be in the immigration process. So when we look at this immigration, I know, everybody's rushing to the border, and I get it, but the fentanyl is trafficking through, those come through the legal ports. Those are not the people running across the Rio Grande. Is human trafficking coming through those avenues? Absolutely. You can't deny that. But the rhetoric that is causing fear is that the fentanyl is coming through that avenue, and it's not. It's coming through the actual borders. So rather than send the U.S. Army and post them up along the border, why don't we invest the appropriate amount of money into making sure that the border crossings are expanded and efficient enough, just like any other you can't even get onto a military base. It should be the same way coming across the border.
But what we got to do.
And so real quick, and so instead of campaigning on this fear of what immigrants may do, and what a select few have done that were found, which is more than what U.S. citizens do to themselves here, why not be honest and stop pandering to either party's fear and say, hey, the direct avenue is here, and we can do that more simply?
But you know what it is? First, we got to have people that have courage enough, and that's why you're running, to create a legitimate pathway for that to be done. Because what has happened is, because both sides spend all of this time finger pointing each other,
sure,
that they're not making decent, common sense decisions on creating a legitimate way for people to be able to immigrate here. And that's the problem. Like, for example, the teacher example. Hey, man, this guy, A, B, and C, let's put him here. He can definitely be a benefit to the country. He's going to pay his taxes. This is an area of need. If you're going to do something, just set the mechanism up. We got Congress right now that refuses to even set a mechanism up. All we want to do is complain about too many coming over and the conditions that they're coming over in, or not enough coming over in somebody's mind. So listen,
Yeah.
Let's set something up to make a decision.
And I'll say this. I just saw a Zoom. I watched a Zoom where Black men, and they voted. They didn't vote like the 92% of Black women for Harris. More Black men started to vote for Trump. And I'll say this: tearing down these apartments, I'm not opposed to them. The bureaucracy is way too big. You know, when federalism began way back when, you know, the strong central government versus states' rights, there was a fear that government would become too big, and in becoming too big, they would have too much control over what the states have done. And so, just like some of the gentlemen in that video, I agree with them. I don't like how the president has changed course, right? Because the public needs some kind of rails to operate on, because the uncertainty in a social psychological effect is going to be devastating. You know, watch the summertime. It's when the impact of what has pivoted starts to take hold, and the weather starts warming up, you're going to start seeing more social reactions to this. So I disagree with how he's done it. You can't pivot an aircraft carrier on a dime. That joker it takes a long time to turn that ship around.
Yeah.
And if this is what he wanted to do, which we knew Project 2025 is what he wanted to do, an independent, I think, would say, well, we see what's coming. So instead of fighting this, how can we say, well, hey, we can work with this to some extent, but for this, and this, can we do something about that? And I know the reactions right now would be like, Charles, are you crazy? Did you read Project 2025? And I'll say, I did read it. And I don't agree with a lot of it. However, we're in a democracy.
Exactly. And you know, it's something we have to realize, and I got to touch on something. Please let me touch on this. People, when you look at the government itself, some people will say, well, it needs to run more like a business. And I say,
but it's not.
I have a problem with some of that. Exactly. I'm gonna break it down to us. Let me break it down.
Come on.
Let me break it down to the people in the back.
Come on.
All y'all. So the C students, D students, EC. I got you. Basically, it's a situation upon which the government is there to provide particular services.
Yeah.
If those services are not provided, it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
When you're running a business, your key to a business is to make money.
That's the point.
That's your number one point.
That is the whole point of a business. Yeah.
That's the whole thing about running a business. That's the number one thing about running a business. In one thing, a business, your job is to make money. We get it. But in government, you are there to provide a service.
To the people.
To the people. That's the most important thing in running the governmental agency, or a governmental arm, is providing the service to the people.
It must be.
It must be provided. Over here,
and it must be selfless leadership.
Bingo.
It must be, and I know it takes money to make these moves. And you know, someone said the other day about the oligarchs, and I want to speak to that, because I believe, like you, government is not business. You know, government, you have a P&L in business, a profit and loss statement in business, but government is not a business, even though there are some profit to be made and there are going to be losses, but it's still government. And so, you know, I'll go back to the point of the Project 2025 and this removal of the bureaucracy. Great, you're doing Project 2025. There are going to be disadvantage economic impact to marginalized communities, not due to what is being implemented now, but just to the structural establishment of the social construct that we live in. So rather than me going back and saying, you know, all this happened, so we have to do this, I get all that history happened. I'm a certified history teacher. I get it. But this is democracy. This is a government. This person won. And so now I have to unpack this thing, and I have to figure out in going back to the oligarchs because they don't care about race or gender either. I'll be honest with you. If you really unpack it, it's about money.
About money.
So what about your agenda is going to make us money? Because the oligarchs have been there since before Teddy Roosevelt. They've been back there since Rockefeller. This is embedded in the system, and no politician is going to come along and remove them.
And Elon Musk is a new oligarch. And so
the question becomes, right. And so the question becomes, pragmatically, instead of fighting these trillions of dollars, because I can't, let's be honest with the American people. American people will never win against oligarchs unless a majority of the population comes to the political process and literally stops it. I don't have $1 trillion. I don't have $1 billion. I won't tell you how much I got, but there's nowhere close. So instead of doing that, let me look at the civil rights and say, where is there an opportunity? Because if they're economically centered in their mindset, how can I make civil rights economically advantageous to them? How can I show them, instead of this DEI as the biggest thing that they used to win campaigns, and I agree to a certain extent that that DEI, born out of the 1965 EEOC diversity manager positions, it was born out of a civil rights effort to provide upward access for previously excluded people. However, that's not how I practiced it. I practiced in, well, I can't force you to hire anybody, but what I can do is I can help you see the best potential without looking at race. We can look at it from a psychological perspective. And if you approach it from a business perspective instead of the civil rights agenda perspective, then you will start to see the profitability is exceptionally higher using inclusive practices that are better for the culture of the organization to work. That's where the benefit is. And 46% increase in profits just by changing how people engage with one another. And the impact on that is the diminish of bias that helps you see people for merit rather than get stuck behind they're Black and I have to have a certain amount of Black people. I have to have a certain amount of LGBTQ plus people. We're not in that space anymore. It's ideologically different, not immutably different. So I think that's the course, instead of fighting what is ultimately not compatible.
You know what I'm going to tell you? People are more concerned about how they identify as opposed to what they're going to do.
Ooh.
Let's break this down.
Come on, brother.
Just because I identify with you does not mean that I'm going to do what's in your best interest.
Yeah.
And we got to start talking about that, because there's some people that don't look like you that are going to go out and say, you know what, that's wrong. I'm going to protect you because I'm a decent individual.
Right.
I think that's wrong. Right. I got your back.
Right.
And there's some people that look like those same people that'll say, hey, I know that's wrong, but I ain't going to say nothing because I know what's best for me. And even though we identify as the same thing, I'm still going to go do this.
We're not monoliths. Exactly. We're not just one dynamic. We are a complex, all of us. Every human being is a complex person. Every human being is unique with their experiences. Are there commonality between experiences? Sure there is. But unless you grew up with a Black mom and a Black dad and a white mother on the south side of Chicago in the ghetto, poverty-ridden area of Robbins, Illinois, you're not going to know what it looks to, you're not going to know what it feels to look like this and have your Black community say that you're not Black enough, or your white community excludes you because you were raised in a Black culture, right? Bingo. So my experience is unique to me, and those that and other people will share commonalities in it, and we can still have completely opposite ideologies of what we want or see in the world. That's just the reality.
And what you just said is about one thing. Hey, I may not look like you. I may not be in your situation currently, but I'm going to do the right thing by you.
Exactly.
And that's what it comes down to. And see, that's key, because sometimes we're electing people that look like us, that may be Black, that may be
Yeah.
LGBTQ,
What they
that
call
may be
identity
white, or may be
politics.
Hispanic,
Yeah.
but they're not doing what's best for me and the culture and our situation. And they're not doing what's best for the people that are electing them.
Absolutely.
They just
Absolutely.
look like you, but they're not rocking with you.
Not at all. Not at all. And so I think leaning on that constantly, the identity politics, I think that's a lot of how we stay in the cycle of perpetuating a lack of having individuals in office that provide us a real service. To me, the representative is representing the voices of all of the people, not just those that are particular to a certain position. And I think when representatives are either Democrat or Republican, I think both candidates do want to serve the people. I do believe that. The effect, though, is that the constituents are feeling that they're left with a choice. Do I choose between the Republican who is pro-life, and I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but I do believe in fiscal economic politics, or do I pick the Democrat who I have come to believe overspends my money and always raises my taxes, but I don't support pro-choice. Now they're left in this predicament when they don't need to be. There's compromises that can be made that suits the sum of the whole. But
what you just said, can I stop you? Can I stop you? And I'm gonna tell you, this is why Charles Harper is running for Congress. There are some times where people in certain parties are not even allowed to take positions that are either A, in the middle, or sometimes may benefit their own constituents because the larger body does not see it that way for the larger body. And if somebody is elected in your district, they are supposed to do what's best for your district.
Let me tell you what's in this district. This district, the 5 largest ethnic groups in Congressional District 32, where I'm at, those who identify as white, non-Hispanic, 32%. Those who identify as Black or African American, non-Hispanic, 20%. Hispanic, 16%. 2 or more Hispanic ethnicities in the Hispanic population, 11.8. Do you know this district has about 35 or 40% of this district are immigrant born, not even US born. There are people in this district, when we look at inequity, there are, especially in this district, they fought between 1963 and 2022. And we know that that's where this change in the Democrat and Republican ideologically based people, where that changed, wages have stagnated and stayed relative to a 1973 value, even though, and how I'll explain that very simply is, as inflation has risen, obviously wages have gone up, but wages have not risen commensurate with inflation prices. And so what ends up happening is instead of getting raises, people will get COLAs, or cost of living adjustments. Those aren't raises. Those are meant to keep your wage up just with inflation. And that hasn't happened. And then we saw this big shift in how wages are paid by corporations, and obviously trickle down economics. And the one thing that was not afforded in that, which you would think human decency will allow that to continue by deregulating, because it seemed to be going that way. But what we had was an inability to regulate the human condition of greed. That's innate. I'm greedy. I ate, my wife bought some pistachios 2 days ago, and she said, man, these pistachios are $11 a bag. You got to slow down eating these pistachios. And I was like, I'm going to try. And then last night I posted it on my social media today. I literally was just eating pistachios, kind of reviewing content for today. And I went through a whole jar of pistachios. Why? Because I'm greedy. So this idea that you can alleviate some kind of regulations for this purpose of greed, and the people not get what they need, that's not grounded in reality. That's hopeful. So these are the things that I'm talking about that have affected this community. And so while Democrats are fighting for this and Republicans are fighting for this, these wages have remained suppressed. What are you doing about this? Instead of just trying to get me to come vote for your party again.
And you know what it is? There is a disconnect between the people that we are electing and the people that live in the district doing the electing, which means if I'm a family man or a woman and I got 2 kids and we're trying to pay our bills, and then I elect you, do you understand me? Do you understand what I'm going through? Right. Are you willing to step up for me, knowing that I voted for you and that I got my 2 kids here that need services? And my husband needs this and I need that. And I'm not asking for a handout. I want to work for it, but make it affordable is all I'm asking.
That's all I'm asking.
Will you stand up for me when I need you to do that, Charles Hall?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the only reason that I want to run, is because I don't subscribe to one political ideology or the other, right? I understand that bipartisan bills aren't really bipartisan if there's only one member of the other party voting on the bill, and that and I'm not running because as a Democrat, because that would be the easier route, as many people told me before I decided I was going to run. If I ran with one of the major political parties, in fact, as evidence, Julie Johnson, the Democrat Party contributed over $500,000 to her campaign, right? I think she raised something like $2.1 million, but the party gave her over $500,000 for her campaign. So that would be the easier route to go. But I just don't subscribe to a political party owning me and owning what I can say. Because even though I've never met Julie Johnson, when I hear her speak from Congress, I hear the Democrat talking points, and I have to think she has more to say than what the Democrat Party is advocating for her to speak about, right? Well, this person, real quick, this person has been an attorney for over 20 years, right? She is a lot of part of the work that she did for the Texas House, because I want to give her props. A lot of the work that she did for Texas House was, patient protection rights, insurance, advocating for the LGBTQ plus community, and considering all the hatred that this community gets. I'm glad that someone like her was there to run and represent that community. But again, she is tied to the party. And so that means that she would have to go against the party if her beliefs were found somewhere in the Republican Party. She would have to go against her party to support some other things, and that would avail her to risk of not being supported. I can't do that, man.
But Charles, let me tell you something. You hit the nail on the head, and it's a problem that I ran into when I ran for District 7 in Dallas. Now, those are not party affiliated, but people know for the most part, if you run there, you're a Democrat for the most part. But the problem is there are some positions that I would take that people didn't like that were not typical Democratic positions.
Right.
And so people moved away from me, and that party will move away from you sometimes.
I remember that.
Lockstep. If you're not lockstep and do everything that they tell you to do. But lockstep is sometimes hurts the people in my district. And I'm not going to lockstep with you if I'm hurting my district. I'm not going to do that. Those people voted for me. I need to stand up for them.
And that's why I think now is the time for independence. I said it in my campaign speech release that in Washington's farewell address, he warned Hamilton and Jefferson of forming political parties. And he said to the effect that these political parties, even though they begin in representation of the major ideologies of the people, what they end up doing, if not regulated, they move to campaign for power themselves instead of the people. And like I said, we can go all the way back to Hamilton and Jefferson and how this moved forward, but that's blame or shame. We've come to a point where both parties have so much money that all they seem to stay in power now, fighting each other and getting people to simply support them fighting each other instead of finding real compromise, right? For example, abortion, right? That was a big issue. Harris ran on pro-choice, and the Republican Party, the evangelists, more than anyone else, believes in pro-life. Why does it have to be one way or the other for all the people? Because all the people don't believe that. So you're forcing a woman to say, I have to vote Democrat if I'm pro-choice. I have to vote Republican if I'm pro-life. But what it could be is, if you are pro-life and that's what you want, that's great for you. And that's great if that's your religious community, because it's religious based. Good. Be pro-life. And for those that are pro-choice, well, that should be legal too, with the restraint that everything has to come from a licensed physician. These are the experts. And so no legislator should stand above a licensed expert to tell a woman what to do with her body.
And see,
and real quick, as an independent, I can say both of these positions are viable. Mm-hmm. And so rather than force an entire demographic of people, millions of people, to say you can either be this or that with mm-hmm. this party or that party, the compromise would be to create laws going forward that allows for that regulation and allows people to be pro-life. Why is that problematic?
You know, the main word that you said, compromise. It's something that we forgot how to do. We no longer understand how to compromise. And we're not willing to compromise when it suits the people that put us in office. And that's why you're running, once again, that's why Charles Harper is running as an independent. If he has to compromise and it's going to benefit his constituents, then he's going to compromise to benefit those constituents, because it's common sense.
And that's what democracy is.
Bingo.
Democracy is compromise.
Bingo.
There is no democracy without one person saying to the other person, you know, I disagree with this point and this point, but they are valid points. They are valid points. So taking your valid point and my valid point, how can we coalesce these things to find enough commonality to create a solution that doesn't divide Americans? If you want to be a Democrat and Republican, fine. That's your right. That's your choice to identify. But this body must come together to unite the people. So I sincerely think and believe that it's the role of the people's house to solve the problems and not divide the people in them.
And let me say this to you. You grow up, you live your life, you work in construction 13 years, you get educated 13 years. Then in addition to that, you work in our schools, teaching our students, you do research, you write papers, you're in a movie, you do all of this great stuff to understand life, people, positions, and history. And then you get elected. Uh-oh, there we go.
We are live.
They're live, right? Then you get elected, and then somebody tells you, you know what? Don't use your common sense. We're going to tell you what to do.
Yeah, you're going to read this pundit line. Yeah, you're going to read this pundit's line. This is the narrative that we want the party to follow.
We're not going to do that. And see, that's where people have started to give up on politics, because what they're saying is, the person that I know Charles Harper. I know Charles is educated. I know Charles is about the community. I know he's a sensible guy. He's going to use his common sense. So I let Charles Harper. Then he gets elected, and then the party says, you know what? We know in your district that it'll probably be best for you to do A, but the party line is B, so you need to do B.
And we're seeing that with the town halls, aren't we?
Yes.
We're seeing that. We're seeing constituents getting a real feel of what happens when a political party campaigns on ideologies and is not able to find compromise with the other party with their valid points, right? The Democrats have valid points about structurally what happens to the citizenry of this country as it pivots to follow these executive orders. There's validity in that. There's validity of the Republican Party saying, hey, you know, we are so many $1 trillion in debt, and we are going to come to a point where it is going to de-evolve the country. It is going to break down our democracy economically. So these two things are correct at the same time. So with them being correct at the same time, without the fear of losing your base, you have to be able to articulate to your base, hey, this is our goal, and here are the barriers to that goal. Here are what the other party is offering for us to compromise on. Here is where we don't want to compromise. Here are some potential agreements. Now, constituents, I know you don't support this party or this party. Here are our options as we've come up so far.
And Charles, let me touch on a couple of points. Give me about 45 straight seconds to just talk this out.
Come on.
The reason why you're running is because when you're not aligned with party A or party B, and you do something that's best for the community, party A or party B cannot punish you for it. What's happening is people are getting elected. They get in a position and they have to take a position. Let's say they have to take position C instead of A or B.
Right.
When they take position C because they're a part of party A punishes them.
Party A punishes. I was just watching Julie Johnson worked with this agency about conservatism in environmental in the environmental sector. Now, I'm not sure if people are widely putting this together, but there's a direct link between agriculture and climate change. And in fact, these are national security issues, but we don't have enough time for me to delve deep into it. But what we're seeing here is a pushback against climate change, right? We're seeing a pushback against other avenues to pursue agricultural sustainability in this country, particularly Ukraine, when we think about these tariffs and supply chains, right? Ukraine is what the breadbasket of Europe. You know, the United States exports livestock. Well, how do we get the grain to feed the livestock if we're strangling ourselves and our supply chains with these tariffs, right? Bingo. And then on top of it, if I'm not considering regulations involving how we're drilling for oil, which I agree we should be drilling for our own fossil fuels right now, but that's not sustainable, right? That hurts the agriculture because it affects climate change. It affects our atmosphere. So rather than fight and say, hey, we're either going to be conservative environmentalists or we're going to be super pro oil, why don't we say, you know what? We do need these fossil fuels right now, and we should be drilling on our own land right now because that helps our national security interests, that helps us economically. And let's do that while we're simultaneously planning forward to pivot from that to more green technology that can be financially sustainable. President Obama, when he came into office, he did come out with some economically viable green movement for venture capitalists to invest in and to make money. But because you had the other party fighting against his position simply because of party, the investors in that, it dried up. And so that did not become viable to serve as evidence that it could. So venture capitalists, like your oligarchs, can say, you know what, there's money to be made there. Let me put some more money into that and really lift it up. So again, instead of fighting the oligarchs, why don't you present them an option and say, let's put some money here. Let's come up with a long-term transition plan without eliminating, because you're not going to eliminate people investing in oil. That's too much money. So I'm not going to fight that. I'm going to give it like water. I'm going to give it a path forward.
You can do two things at once. And what you just said, bingo.
Common and people sense. Can make money.
You can, bingo. And you can do three things at once. You can move forward. You can do the sensible thing for now.
Yeah.
And people can make money for now and later.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's the thing. And the community can benefit from it all.
Yeah.
Just by using a little common sense. And you being an independent, once again, that's why Charles Harper is running as an independent. It allows him to make that decision without the repercussions of people trying to punish you for doing what's best for your community.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
And I know we're getting close to closing up here, but I do want to say one thing. I did want to make sure that I differentiate myself from a Bernie Sanders, from an AOC, because while I do agree with their position that the oligarchs do own a lot of politics, they do, and they have for more than 100 years. They have. So I hear Bernie, I hear AOC in that party speak to that. I don't support that fight. I don't think that fight is winnable. And so I don't want to rile people up into believing that there's a possibility that in some short time here, we can pick some president and remove the oligarchs. That's just not a viable way forward. But I do believe that college tuition is exceedingly out of hand. And unless you, like the Biden administration with the loan forgiveness, if you don't find a viable way forward to at least bring down the cost for people to become more educated, you're going to continue to have people that opt out of higher education and formal knowledge and try to find some job in the secondary sector, agriculture or trades or what have you. But you can't sustain an entire population of the United States with just people going to the trade sector. You have to have people, you have to have paths for every type of person to have a way to thrive in this country, because let's not get it twisted.
And it be affordable.
Yeah, this is an economic country. This country was started on economics, not freedom of beliefs. That came so that we could speak against the crown without being put in jail. But this is an economic country. It's been that since mercantilism, and it has not changed. So I don't intend on fighting the natural foundation of this country. But I also understand at the same time that your citizen population has to have an ability to thrive, because one, you need about 70% consumption every day for this country to remain economically viable. You need a population growth rate of about 2.2% for the economic to sustain, for the country to not devolve. So there are things, again, on both sides of this aisle. Both of them are needed for this country to actually work and deliver a path forward for the citizens here to thrive here. And I think that's what both sides of the aisle want. I think both of the aisles are constricted, trying to remain in power instead of remaining in a position to serve the people. And so that's why, even though I tend to lean Democratic from the social space, I also lean conservative because of the fiscal space. And so it comes down to me of having an independent and a rise of independence to say we don't have to have it extreme one way or the other. Vote an independent into Congress, and let's make the Democrat and Republican Party in Congress accountable to people in Congress. If we had more independents in Congress, then it would allow for both parties to now be accountable more to the people instead of just being accountable to the powers and abilities of the party.
Charles, what you just said, and to the general public who is watching this podcast, watching this town hall, if you want something different, then do something different. And when I say if you want something different, do something different.
Yeah.
That's the reason why Charles Harper is running for Congress in District 32. Yeah. Right now, things are going to continue to go the same if you don't do something different. That's just natural common sense. And you got to have somebody who's willing to step outside of the lines. And Charles is a habitual line stepper. He's going to step outside the line. So
going all the way back. You know, I remember when I did my show with Malik Youssef. I think he has like 8 Grammys now. He only had 5. In fact, when I met him back in the day in Chicago, he didn't have any. He was speaking on the south side of Chicago, just doing the stuff. But anyway, when we did that show, Black and White, A Man Divided, you know, the original thought was people are going to see this as race baiting, right? But as people went to the show and they found out, that show what it was really about, and I'll tell you real quick before we jump off, you know, my mother, white, having me in the 70s, you could imagine that was just 6 years after Loving versus Virginia. So you can imagine how my parents may have felt with my mother marrying a Black man during that time, right? And so they were estranged for a certain amount of time. And so what my dad did was he constantly encouraged my mother to reach out to them. And what ended up being the bridge that brought that family to our family together was my grandfather. He was a World War II vet and ran bulldozers and played drums. And my father played drums and was an equipment operator. And so that show was really about demonstrating that what we perceive as the divisions against us are really only perceptions that the social construct has manifested. And that if we really wanted to find commonality, then we can let go of identity politics and really start to see each other and not see the outside of each other. And that's what that show was about. And so I've been doing that since my first book, Freemasonry in Black and White. I did it with my show, Black and White, A Man Divided. I've done it in teaching. I've done it for in my diversity, equity, and inclusion work, bringing even in Overland Park, which is I think a more than 93% conservative area. When I delivered my inclusion workshops, most of the individuals in there, and I have the survey said that, wow, Charles took politics completely out of what we were learning. And I had no idea that DEI could be this. Because it's not.
You decided to put the community first and really just try to have an open conversation about, hey, these are the issues. Let's deal with them. Yeah. This is what this side thinks. This is what this side thinks. But this is what it really is.
Absolutely. Let's do some backwards planning. What's the goal? Hey, well, the goal is this. Well, let's backwards plan from that goal and see what elements we can fit to lead to that goal, instead of saying we can't even start to look at that goal because these people are in the way.
And that's a beautiful thing. And once again, the whole reason why you're running is to have the openness and the ability, without pushback, without punishment, to really sit down and get the people what they want so that they can move forward in having the American dream, and that they can move forward in taking care of their families, that they can move forward to have the opportunities that they need to have, and more importantly, that this country has the opportunity to move forward.
Absolutely. Well, Calvin, I've appreciated your friendship since we met and became friends.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you, with our In the Den talk show that we had for 2.5 years, doing Essence and
you know what, I'm gonna tell you, man,
celebrities.
We were actually doing the podcast right before the wave, and I got to thinking, I was like, man, if we'd have waited or we just went YouTube, we would have been the first wave, because we did this before everybody else would see. This is what we got to go back. This is your look. We think for the future. We were already ahead.
Yeah, we were doing it. Man.
If we'd have done it on YouTube, we'd have been in the game before anybody else started.
and we can look, honestly, we can look into, exploring that again. I'd love to
Yes.
do that with you again, but and your support here now with this campaign is invaluable, man. So I appreciate you. Next time, I hope to have Dr. Smith on.
Yes.
Again, she got called away, and professional responsibilities will do that to people. But
And
we'll
we got
have
to
her
give her a
on.
plug. We got to give a plug out.
Got to give her a plug. Come
Look,
on.
right now she had released, and we were part of that project. He never came home.
Yeah.
The story of Lehman Howard, a social justice documentary.
Oh yeah.
True story, man. Lehman Howard was in just jail for 42 years, mainly for a crime he did not commit. He was mentally disabled and was forced to confess to a crime he didn't commit. And A.L. Smith tells the story with so much eloquence and so much history and so much passion. And Charles Harper and Calvin Johnson are part of the project.
That was incredible.
It was an incredible project.
Yeah. And
but
now
it's
available.
Human side.
And now it's available on Amazon.
Amazon Prime.
Yep.
It's their streaming platform, Amazon Prime. We're going to be in other streaming platforms soon.
Yep.
But go to Amazon Prime. He never came home.
I believe it's also been used for some law school case study.
Yes.
It had its premiere in Shreveport, Louisiana, where the incident occurred. And soon I think it's going to be delivered in the DFW area. So I look forward to that. And that was an honor, like you said, to be sitting there, in a historical expert and a legal expert on a documentary that is representative of a lot of not just what Black people have gone through, but Hispanic people, immigrants in this country,
the American experience,
poor white people.
Yes,
it's an American experience. It just happened to this individual because of the circumstances during that time period. But I think it serves as evidence that if you don't know what has happened, you could allow something similar to happen again. And so
exactly.
And so I think I was definitely honored for that. Before we jump off, I just want to invite everyone to go to Vote Harper, 32tx.com. That's our website. You can follow me on social media on every platform. Again, this is a movement. Like my guy Malik said when we did our show, he said this isn't just something we're trying to do. This is something that we're doing. And we've come to a place where the gridlock is hurting us as citizens. And so if politicians won't get out of the way of their party, then we're going to have more independents get in there and help these parties to actually work together for the people. And that's why I'm running.
And you know what, just what he said, and I said several times, Mr. Harper understands the community. He's done the work, and he's willing to stand with you when everybody else is standing with them. Man, so let's get him in there so he can stand with you.
All right, brother. I thank you very much. And I can't wait to do this again with you and have Dr. Smith on as well.
We will. We're going to get her in the next time. It's an amazing experience with her. And y'all got to meet her. And next time you will. Once again, Charles Harper, Texas Congressional District number 32, independent for Congress. Thank you.
Thank you.